Okay, well, welcome to our Littledata UK Agency Summit. We're live today talking from Woburn Safari Park, and thank you for joining us. And I've got on stage here Phil from Pass Agency and now Pass AI. We'll talk a bit about that. And Anna Wilson, who runs her own consultancy. So thank you for coming. Perhaps just tell us a little about your what you do, what your specialism is.
So Pass as a business really, to the external world, we're like an email agency, email marketing agency, but really where our speciality is how we use zero-party data to really drive that personalisation. And we're probably one of the only email agencies in the UK or Europe that want customers to send less emails to customers. How do we get better quality, better personalised, more relevant comms to customers, and not just think about email being a cheap channel that we can just throw more and more content and volume at to drive results.
Right.
Okay. I'm Anna. So I have got too much experience. Show my age. 20 years experience, both client side, agency side, and then more recently, 7 years ago, I set up my own consultancy. I work with a number of brands ranging from almost a fractional CMO role all the way through to kind of working on projects. So, for example, moving ESPs, getting the most out of Klaviyo and other ones like that too. I also am a non-exec director at an agency called Go Direct Marketing. And with them, for a lot of our brands, we do direct mail. But then actually look at where that fits in with the whole kind of ecosystem and actually analysing kind of the performance and the incremental uplift of that activity.
Okay, thank you. First real question is, how do you both approach retention or sort of lifecycle marketing with a new brand? What's the right time for brands to be engaging with this? Or are there particular kind of hooks by which they might you realise they need your services?
$1 million question. I think everybody needs retention marketing almost from day one.
Yeah.
Even more so now with the increased customer acquisition costs that we're seeing. I think there's still a disconnect sometimes. We were chatting about this earlier. That division within a customer's business of acquisition, someone owning acquisition, someone owning retention. Well, actually, if acquisition is only focused on getting a customer through to the website and a transaction in that session, they're losing so much opportunity from how retention marketing can come in and join that. And so, potentially, we talk to a lot of brands about, well, the primary driver of some sort of paid activity is to get ideally a customer in that transaction. If not, if we can get an email address and a marketing permission, email or SMS can be such a much more cost-effective channel to get them over the line for that first transaction. And then how do we get them into that buying habit? And I think the biggest mistake a lot of brands will have is, well, we want a brand, customer to transact every month without fail, when actually their average purchase frequency might be 1.2 times a year. But they're trying to get a transaction a month, but they're sending an email every 2 days. So actually there's that whole piece of, well, you've paid all that money for that and that high customer acquisition cost to get the first order. Your profit then comes potentially, certainly for some brands, on the second or third order. Yeah. But if you're absolutely going hell for leather, you're just churning through data. So a lot of what we're talking about with brands is less about revenue, but more about profitable action. So how do we drive a profitable action, whether that's convert a site visitor to an email address and a marketing permit? How do we convert that then to a first order, first to second, and onwards? Yeah.
And you make a really good point, because it's really understanding the product that brand sells. If a brand is selling sofas, then actually chances are, yes, they might have multiple rooms in the house and there might be a need to buy another sofa, but they're not going to be buying multiple per year ongoing. But quite a lot of brands don't look at that. They just kind of go, oh, yeah, we've got email as a tool, or we've got some other activity, Facebook retargeting or whatever as a tool. Let's just hammer them until they buy again. But actually, by the point that they're ready to buy again, they probably have well dismiss you as a brand because they've just been bombarded and kind of fed up on there. So when I'm working with a new brand in particular, I will look at what they're selling, what their current customer metrics are. So understanding things like their retention rates, what they consider or what should they consider as a lapsed customer, and what should that cycle be, because it's not a one size fits all across kind of multiple product mixes.
So just to dig a bit deeper on that sort of burning through data point, and I think what you mean is that what you're trading off, while you might thinking your frequent emailing is driving revenue, you're also getting high unsubscribe rates, and so that's basically reducing your ability to actually retain that customer longer term.
Completely that, but also the deliverability,
Yeah.
the fact that we've got high frequency. I think there's a number of things that have happened over the last few years, coming out of that COVID peak of, we had a captive audience of people sat at home that we can just look at emails and had spare time and cash and were just buying impulsively at times. So there's an expectation from certain brands that growth would continue, and it hasn't. The fact that email really is still a relatively cost-effective channel, so even more so with the higher Facebook marketing costs and everything else that have gone up, that people they're leaning more and more into email. Certainly ESP's attribution, and so how some agencies will talk about attribution being the given, are driving that kind of approach of, we just need to send more emails. More. What we're seeing is, the other thing is the Apple privacy opens have skewed what is a genuine performance of the channel. We're starting to see more bot clicks coming through now. It's really interesting. I had an SMS platform showing me a graph that went, look, unique click rate is declining down, but what they failed to put in the graph when they were talking about it was the fact that unique opens have scaled the other way due to the Apple privacy open. So actually, the number of unique visitors to the website is probably trending flat. It's just the graph looks different as a unique click rate of open because of the increase.
Oh, the ratio of
exactly.
clicks.
So there's like, we've all done it. There's always a bit of smoke and mirrors. We'll try and spin a positive story out of some data, but there's definitely a lot of false bits going on there. We're seeing Gmail doesn't really report back what's getting into the mailbox, but especially now as we gear up for the peak of Black Friday, the ESPs will start to really restrict what's going into the inbox. And I think we're going to have every year is a slightly tougher Black Friday, Cyber Monday peak going into Christmas. But the brands that aren't doing any segmentation now and just mailing the list 3-4 times a week, where do you go from 3-4 times a week as a norm to a peak? There's nowhere else to go, short of sending multiple times a day, which is just going to...
Totally.
And it is a massive one about bot clicks and the Apple opens. I was talking to a new brand this week, and they were saying their engagement metrics had gone down this last kind of few weeks. Their part of their engaged customers, their emailing has actually increased. When I looked at it, actually they had 7,000 bot clicks in July. They've put them into all their emails, and guess what? They're not opening, they're not clicking, and their engagement's doing this, and they're thinking that something's gone wrong with their brand. But actually, it won't just be impacting their overall metrics, it will be impacting their deliverability. So if they go into Black Friday with their thinking they're engaged, because a lot of brands will look at, 90 days for engagement, and there was massive amounts of bot clicks in through June to August.
It's actually a really interesting point that, because we had actually that last week with one of our large brands who suddenly said that we've got this massive amount of new users, what's going on, and we tracked down to basically that the bot created something like 150,000 email sign-ups in a week. And so again, as you say, that the problem is if you can't sort of break this out and include those, then it goes on to pollute all the downstream metrics, because so many people are like, as you said correctly, why is our conversion rate crashed? Well, the answer is because it was never really whatever the top of the funnel in the first place.
It's been a perfect storm this year of trying to do year-on-year reporting, GA4 versus universal analytics, transition from last kick to data-driven model, the just general, I suppose. I think customers' budgets are tighter, so we're having to fight for the same share of wallet, and we're having to fight harder for it. There's a lot of noise going on. We were chatting again earlier. We can almost guarantee, I can see when I receive a basket abandonment email from a customer what platform they're on, because they've activated the email. It's got the same line of copy. You've left these items in your basket. people are just activating for the sake of it. There's no thought about the strategy that goes behind it. And I think I say this, the barrier to entry in certainly the email marketing space is very low. You can go through an accreditation for a certain platform in 2 hours. And suddenly you can put you're accredited. You can send an email, but you have no idea about strategy. You have no idea about customer journeys, but you're accredited and you can go out and pitch your service.
So what is the main question, Anna? What is the best way, therefore, of measuring the impact of email? I mean, in the world in which open rates are pretty much a useless metric, does it vary by client, or how would you typically advise people to sort of measure the value of email marketing?
Well, because email is the kind of the biggest retention channel, and what I tend to do. So yes, I don't completely ignore Klaviyo and the campaign metrics on there, but I look for quite a few of my brands on Suite Analytics, for example, and I'm looking at customer cohorts and looking at the segmentation and actually looking at retention rate and looking at other metrics to understand as a customer how they're performing. Then looking at that, actually splitting that further and going, well, actually the email engaged people are performing like this. Engaged being based on non-bot clicks, but clicks, not actual opens because of Apple privacy. But actually looking at them versus the non-engaged, but also bringing in kind of the incremental testing. So actually, for example, with the Littledata stuff, a couple of my clients recently, we've been looking at trials and looking at the incremental uplift of that activity, and really actually being able to get under the skin of whether it's the email that's driven that or something else. It's kind of looking at that whole kind of mix in terms of some. Because one of the questions, and you spoke about it, but in terms of email frequency, how many emails should I be sending a week? Actually having test groups to actually look at the different frequency and how that works across the board, because it might seem an easy option to email every single day of the week or every few days. People forget about the costs internally of doing that, and actually they just look at the revenue and it all adds up. But if you're pulling back and really drilling down into the actual uplift you're creating, the strategy will be different.
And let's go back to you had a good point about deliverability. The one of the things I've been talking about a lot of my content the last month is that there are quite a lot of tools out there that are promising to kind of basically boost your audiences in Klaviyo or whatever email tool you use by feeding in other maybe the customer didn't actually volunteer the email address, but you can magically produce it. And these tools have results. I mean, obviously they are people who've been on your website, and then therefore they are not completely random customers. The problem is that the spam reported rate of those third-party emails is going to be a lot higher. And so what
7 times higher generally.
Yeah, right. And so what I think there's this sort of bad maths going on where you go, okay, for your abandonment flows, which maybe generate 10% of your revenue from email, we're doubling those. Cool. So you've got an extra 10% of revenue. But what you've just done is basically killed the deliverability on the 90% of your email, your kind of new product launch campaigns, your kind of your sale campaigns and so a tiny drop there, your spam rate, going up that much is going to kill the deliverability and the rest. So the maths doesn't add up. It's like a sort of illusionary tactics. Like look at this small bit over here, that's gone up, but don't look at the rest of it, which has gone down.
We will typically that balance wheel of 1 to 5% of your email revenue, email send volume, being the automated, the flow.
Yeah.
And that delivering 25 to 30% of the revenue. The rest is coming from top of funnel, getting that data at the top. Now we then say, well, historically, Universal Analytics, when there's a good track record, 15 to 25% being email, last click, with a view that if any higher than that, the other channels weren't working hard enough and weren't getting enough eyes on the site. It's a little bit harder now with the data-driven approach to really pinpoint that piece. But to your point, when you've got higher customer acquisition costs, it's costing you more to get eyes on the site. It's the cost of then that customer unsubscribing is even higher, and that's not considered. So actually, how do we take those people through that journey and actually look at lifetime value? And I think this is where Klaviyo has a huge weakness. We're driving revenue, traffic, based on that historical view with brands, certainly new brands coming through, almost with a blank checkbook from private equity. They're not worried about profit. They are worried about revenue and transactions. Where we're starting to see a transition, what we're doing as an organisation is starting to go, well, actually, what's a profitable action? So actually, if we're having to spend £20 to acquire a customer that's going to make us £10 profit on their first order, there's a negative cost, and we need that second and third order to come through. So how do we become more efficient? It's that vanity metric of, well, we've grown the database by 10,000 this month through a competition. If they're not making any sales, you're paying to store the data, you're paying to manage that whole process. I'd rather see 1,000 people come through that are targeted, optimised, and they're going to drive incremental sales.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a transition in the next year to 2 years to less about campaign performance from a revenue or flow revenue to what's profitable actions, what's increasing lifetime value. And I think Klaviyo especially will need to look at how they transition the tool to be able to start reporting much more as a business intelligence platform rather than an email performance tool.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because I actually think from going to Klaviyo's partner day back in May, that seems actually their aspiration. So I actually think they intend to build out into a fully fledged sort of Google Analytics alternative, in the sense that they understand if brands are going to really make the most out of it, they need to understand that the overall marketing mix, not just isolation, how emails performing.
But again, we've been chatting in the morning, so it's like kindred spirits. There needs to be a transition within organisations and brands to be moving away from almost the product marketing of, we need to sell this product, to customer-focused, customer-centric marketing. So, okay, what's the right product for this customer based on their position in the customer lifecycle at this time? So I think there needs to be an education piece, not just a SaaS tool coming in to do it, because I think you're never going to get the best out of the tool unless you have that education internally as well.
Well, an example of that. So I worked with a sports brand, and the CEO called me early January and said, we had our most amazing December ever. It was best month ever. It was something like 40% growth on the previous year, and they were steaming ahead. I looked at it and spoke to them about the product. They've been selling lots of goggles. And the goggles, they price matched against Amazon and other places and everything else. When they looked at their revenue, it looked amazing. But actually, when they looked at profit, so when I actually said, right, look at the metrics a little bit more, try and understand, because the thing is as well, it was a lot of new customers that are coming in, buying a pair of goggles, and actually the lifetime value of those customers, chances are, wasn't going to be great. They weren't making profit on the first order because they were just chasing the sale. And about 3 weeks later, he rang me and said, December was our worst month ever, and they just hadn't looked at it like that, and they'd changed they'd got 20,000 extra buyers into the pot, which weren't a typical customer. They weren't going to come back and buy. It wasn't like they were selling them on a loss leader product to then get them back, because actually they just weren't in the market for because they were selling triathlon gear. And actually people buying a pair of goggles just to go down to their local pool with no intention of ever running a triathlon weren't going to buy anything else. But there's quite a lot of brands that are still kind of not looking at that figure at the right time.
Yeah. And not taking the production costs into account when running activities, so campaign costs. So email still looks, yes, you've got a platform fee that's probably hidden somewhere in some sort of marketing budget, but they're not taking into account production costs of generating 3-4 campaigns a week, all the design work that goes into that. Yeah. They're going, great, we sent an email, but then you look and go, well, let's assume you use an agency cost of £150 an hour. Let's assume it's taking you half a day to run it. You've made £500 gross. Yeah. By the time you've even taken out the product costs, you've lost money. You might as well just create a check.
Yeah, I was saying one of the problems of channels like email is that they don't, often those people costs are not really considered in the calculation. It's only external spend. So there's a limit. I mean, the actual incremental cost on Klaviyo in an email is nothing, right? But that's not the actual cost of running. The other point, I think that Sean thought about the whole problem of if you do have, as you say, a lot of brands won't break even on the first product, and that's fine as long as you've got a strategy that says, look, for the customers that do, there's your point also about the right product for the right customer, because if you do know that there's this sort of gateway product, then there's this obvious upsell. One of the things actually Littledata helps with in the abandonment flows is actually be able to segment or split those flows out by product category or the product SKU or something. Because I think often that's the sort of one of the simple splits that can really help is let's actually be more generous and maybe give more discounts or whatever to people who we think there's a really good sort of upgrade path here to a profitable customer. But let's not do that for people who who bought our goggles and we're already losing money. We definitely don't want to give away more discount.
And quite a few brands as well. You'll ask them kind of what their acquisition targets are, and quite often it's like, oh, we can afford to spend 40 quid a new customer or whatever that may be, but actually they're not taking into account like the return, the ROAS and the profitability, and and actually 40 quid for someone buying a £15 pair of goggles.
I also had an interesting comment from a drinks brand that we work with that not particularly high margin products, and you're saying the problem about you vendors is you're always talking about ROIs and like that's much extra revenue, but he said, it's not good enough. If you say 3x ROI, what you mean is the amount I spend in actual out of my profit on you is a third of what I'm going to get back in gross revenue. So that's not enough. I'm only making 15% margins, which means that the ROI is going to be 10x before it's even profitable for me. So I think sometimes that's again, as a tech company, there's a sort of again there's this industry trend where we talk about return on investment as being not really a profit-led thing. It's like it's going to generate you extra revenue. Yes, it can, but one of our things a little later is that ROI should be in the 20x really, because then whatever your margins are, you're still making money.
We were looking at reviewing an app using ESP revenue 30x ROI, to gross revenue. When you drill down into the data driven in Gig, it was closer to 4.
Yeah.
So, and that's still at a gross revenue, not
even after your product cost.
But then again, it comes back to this. I hate to say education piece, but that educating brand, marketeers actually they need to be more commercial. They need to be focusing on what's profitable actions rather than just what's pretty to a certain extent.
Okay, we're just going down different things. So how are the brands you're working with also using paid channels for retargeting? So obviously there's a bit of a thing like emails is paid as acquisition, emails retention, but actually it can be the other way around. Like you can use Facebook and Google to retarget people who have already bought from you. Do you see brands doing that in tandem with their email strategy, or
less maybe in tandem? I still think there's this disparate teams at a lot of client sites, and no one really owning the whole customer. But certainly cohorts and segments being sent from, say, Klaviyo back out to Facebook, back out to Google AdWords, TikTok, for example. Really, either for find me more lookalikes or exclude these customers from the next 7 days for acquisition. So they are thinking about it, but I still think it's very, very broad brush. And I think where we focus on, maybe say as a business, the customer contact from an email perspective, there's still we're engaging with other areas of those businesses, but maybe not as fully as we could be. But quite often there's no data check, so those connections time expire and they're not reviewed and monitored. Or the customers go the other way and they go far too granular too quickly. So some of them are very, very small VIP cohorts where there's 200 people in it.
It's not enough.
It's not enough volume.
I mean, there's quite a problem with I know that those Google ads and Facebook ads connect to Klaviyo, one of their most popular integrations. But when you're matching with an email, it's actually quite a small match rate, because I think Google says it's no point. I don't think they allow you to do less than 1,000 people in the audience, because it's you're just not going to get any meaningful results from that. So as you say, it's only useful at quite a large scale.
Even if we're A/B testing, we're looking for sort of 10,000 people in a test, just to give us some real volume. So any smaller than that, your 1 or 2 people can skew the results massively.
And also it's thinking about, back to the point in terms of understanding which products you want, say, acquisition to buy, or you want making profit on or not. It's actually, there may be some people that you don't want to invest in the retargeting on Facebook, Google and other channels, because it's not going to pay off. So so for example, if someone abandons a pair of goggles, keep using goggles as an example,
Yeah,
but there's potentially no point in retargeting them on a
Of course.
Facebook ad, because actually if you've already paid for the email and stuff like that, then you're hammering Facebook or other channels. And I think one of the mistakes a lot of agencies use for meta advertising especially is that they will just look at a ROAS figure and they will go, oh, that campaign's performing much better than the average, let's keep putting more money into it. And then you look at the frequency, and the frequency is like they've seen the ad 20 times over the course of like 2 weeks. It's like, hang on a minute, you're spending way too much on that campaign. It's looking at
I think one of the things that Littledata's Google Analytics connection allows you to do is actually build an audience for Google Ads based on lifetime value.
Yeah.
So we have a lifetime value dimension. And so, for example, you can say, right, I only want to target people who spent X amount, or to your point, I'm going to exclude people who recently purchased out of my targeting for now. And I think those two tactics are actually, in my experience, commonly underused. Like they're not that hard to set up, and they're pretty effective, as you say, albeit that the high spend is still a fairly small audience. As I say, there's a risk of sort of overspending based on small results.
I think all businesses have the habit of, we need to look busy to customers, our clients. So we'll suggest things that probably don't need to be there. So I've seen multiple examples when I've audited Klaviyo accounts of a database of less than 1,000 people that's a 3 or 4 month old business with a win-back flow. What's the point? If you spend the money and the time on that, you spend on that win-back flow, for example, on top of funnel acquisition. And I think that's where agencies have a real risk of just tick boxing down through the list and not going, well, actually, what's this customer's data? Yes, it sounds like we're just going to go back and refine basket abandonment, for example, but that's got the most volume going through that flow at that particular time.
Yeah.
Actually, small incremental gains on a larger volume is going to give us more benefit than activating a new flow that's going to be seen by 10 people a month.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to end on a nice loaded question. I'm going to ask Alan first. Is personalisation still useful? And if so, how far up the funnel should the brand be trying to personalise the customer experience?
It definitely is still useful. I think it does depend on what you're selling. Personalisation can mean a whole bunch of things. So where you've got personalisation, for example, name, it's still I wouldn't recommend every single email, but for certain campaigns it can still actually provide an uplift. When you're talking about personalisation related to product, for example, so actually within the email pulling stuff out that's related to the customer's behavior or the customer segmentation, absolutely. That can definitely drive more relevant content and actually increase engagement and increase purchases. I think some levels of personalization where it requires a lot of work to get to it is potentially not worth it. But so I think it's about having the right tools for the right levels of personalization that makes it a no-brainer, really.
Good. So personalization is good if you make it easy. Phil.
And commercially viable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I always say there's a running joke, I think, in the sector that there's a buzzword. So this year it's AI.
Yeah.
Year before it was personalization. The year before that it was single customer view.
Yeah.
We're an industry that reinvents things.
Yeah.
The amount of meetings I've sat in over the year ago with MD saying we need to do personalization, and we go, great, happy to do that. What data have you got? Well, we've got an email address and a previous transaction.
Yeah. Okay.
How can we do anything with that?
Yeah.
Or they're not even capturing first name in a pop-up. Look, I see the biggest challenge with personalization, certainly in an email, has always been content generation. It's great on the website. We know that there's some really great AI tools out there now that are developing multiple product images on the fly. Email is kind of set at the time of send generally. So the biggest challenge has always been content generation. Customers have got limited resource. Certainly from a campaign perspective, it's getting out the door. We may have all the data points, say, well, actually, we know this is a VIP, show them this different bit of content, or that's a prospect, show them this. Creating the content variables, getting them signed off, has always been very laborious. Tenfold by the fact that brands are sending too many campaigns because they're chasing the volume piece. So there's an education piece. So we actually cut back the volume, really develop the campaign to be much more tailored, and maybe send 1 a week rather than 3 a week, and you'll have the same time. What we're doing as a business is we've just launched a piece of AI to start with, which will be able to integrate into the Klaviyo flows. So if we've got a brand that's using a Octane AI quiz, we're collecting all those different data points about an individual. On the fly, we can use the event tags to then populate 3 or 4 lines or paragraphs of content into the email based on those data points provided either by the on-site action or the quiz. The initial test, we're seeing about a 90% uplift in revenue from running an A/B test on those, which is fantastic. Now, with the caveat that's Klaviyo revenue, but because we're comparing A versus B, it's like for like, so it's fine. How that will develop and evolve will be subject lines, preview lines, and everything else. But at the moment, we're focusing on that first 3 paragraphs of copy to say that we're recognising you as an individual, and we're not just sending you that fact you've left these items in your basket. We're saying, "Hi, Phil. We noticed that that you're this type of customer. You've left this product would be perfectly complemented with product B, which is also in their basket." We're launching with 2 or 3 customers, hopefully today, on that. And I think that, to me, is where brands historically that we were migrating onto Klaviyo 5 years ago had a significant uplift from getting the core customer journey flows in. The optimizations, that uplift in revenue is significant. The optimization of a subject line or maybe a bit of creative design maybe turn the dial 1 or 2%. I'm hoping that this will turn the dial another 20, 30% because it's going to be at scale and bringing all of those different data points in and start to bring them together. Content generation in email has always been the biggest challenge. Yep. The next biggest challenge is to deal with some of the brand side of, and certainly those protectionist view of the world. And I will say a lot of the AI tools are coming out of the States, so that Americanization of language as well, we're being very careful to make sure we're sorting that piece. We did have a big internal discussion about whether, when we launched personalization, we were spelling with an S or a Z. We've gone with Z just purely because the American market is big. But again, that localization, we can even do it to...
you can personalize that in the email.
Exactly, yeah. But we can also do it to do language translations. Yeah. So actually we can start to send really bespoke messaging in local language as well. Not that I'm ever going to check it. Last time I looked at a piece of French homework was obviously a long time ago, so my French is really slow now.
Yeah, I think, so I ended up just saying, I think the bit that later helps with this is, as you say, that the problem, the block of personalization often is you just don't have useful current data points. And so, yes, you can personalize the email based on, say, the product they bought last year, but what we're doing is allowing you to target them based on what they browsed most recently. Yeah. And so, but I think having all those viewed product marks cart more accurately in there, then you can start to, as I say, maybe not necessarily retarget the exact product, but I think that the retargeting based on product category, or whether the personalization based on product category, is pretty powerful because, and I've definitely heard other partners say that you're just basically putting in a even your imagery of the email of it's reflecting the product they purchased. Obviously, that just resonates. We've
been running some tests recently. So one of the limitations with Klaviyo, as we know, is the last product viewed always is the one that you can show. Yeah. We've been testing using that as a I suppose the existing creative versus taking 9 products as a recommendation based on that user's browsing behaviour, trending products, and we're seeing a bigger uplift with the variety. So again, there's things out there that are.
And another simple use case for Littledata is tracking exactly all of the things they viewed and add to cart, not just the last thing. So I think that's the basic limitation. And so I think while we talk a lot about uplifting audiences, some of the value of what we can do with email marketing is actually enabling this kind of personalization.
And to the point earlier about return on investment, it's about being quite succinct. Let's say, I don't know, a basket management program is making, or add to cart is making $6,000 a month. We plug in another platform that increases it to 10. We're not making 10, we're making an incremental 4.
Yeah.
And it's the return on investment is on the additional 4, not the 10. Yeah. And I think a lot of platforms, not yourselves, other platforms will go, well, look, we've made you 10. Yeah. You actually know you've made me 4 because I'm already paying for the 6 as part of the existing ESP suite.
Awesome. Well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining. I think it's my lunchtime. Thank you.
I'm not moving tonight.